Are you a leader who's ready to go from stuck to unstoppable? It's time to stop leading on autopilot and start leading with purpose. Through my Leadership with Purpose program and next level coaching, you'll gain the clarity and confidence and tools to lead from within so you can make a greater impact without burning out. Build stronger teams, crush self doubt, lead with clarity and conviction, and unlock your next level of leadership. Don't settle for good leadership. Step into your greatness. Visit warrenwanling.com to learn more and start your journey today. Your next level of leadership starts now.
Welcome back to another episode of How to Become an Obstacle Buster. I'm your host, Warren Wanling, the show that's dedicated helping leaders and entrepreneurs to overcome their obstacles, build resilience, and achieve success. And I have a great guest to help us do that today, Dr. Sharon Spano. Welcome to the show, Dr. Spano.
Thank you so much, Warren. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. As an executive coach who helps high-impact leaders uncover hidden barriers to success and fulfillment, you hold a PhD in human and organizational systems, and you blend science and personal development to guide CEOs, consultants, entrepreneurs towards radical growth. You also host the Other Side of Potential podcast and the author of Pursuit of Time and Money. Can you share with our listeners a little more about your business?
Well, thank you so much for asking. It's evolved through the years, as you might imagine. Most of my earlier career, I was in and out of Fortune 500 companies around North America, and I did anything from leadership development to strategic planning, a whole host of things. And then as I got into the deeper work, my work is really grounded in human development, as you said, in systems. I started to see that leaders really needed a lot more than just focus on the business. I was always hearing all of these things that were going on kind of behind the curtain, if you will. So, leadership development, human development, all of those things often are grounded in early childhood experiences. No surprise there. I'm not a psychologist, but the work evolved to get into more of the generational issues in some cases. Sometimes there's trauma in the background. So the coaching is really just looking at whatever, oftentimes when people come to me, they're experiencing what I call the emptiness of success. They feel stuck. They're not sure why. They have the business, the cars, the houses, the money, but maybe there's some relationship issues that are holding them kind of hostage a little bit. And so whatever it is, we dig a little bit deeper than the typical coaching process and work through what that might look like. I have a very structured process that is also very readily able to customize such that we can do that deeper level work.
Yeah, that's really fascinating. So you do mention about that emptiness of success, which I think is a fascinating concept to be able to explore. So can you expand upon what that really means? And then why do you think so many high achievers experience it?
Yeah, it's a great question. So let me start with the second one first, because it was interesting to me. We typically think if people have something going on in their background, trauma is a word thrown around a lot these days. There's the capital T and lowercase t, as I like to say. It's all relevant to the individual. So it could be anything from my parents got a divorce when I was 4 years old and, I didn't see my dad for many years, to really true high level, more what we call complex trauma. But what surprised me, Warren, as I got deeper into those conversations and that level of transformational work was that people that are high achievers often have that in the background, and it's what catapults them to be high achievers. And so they have something within their personality structure that enables them to just, push through and move through those obstacles and be successful in spite of it. But as we say in the field of psychology, there's often shadow work that needs to be addressed. And in human development, that is especially true as we develop and move into later stages of what we call human development. We bring all of that with us unless we do the work around it. So now to the second part of the emptiness of success. often they're driven to achieve and succeed, and that's filling the hole. But then once they get all those toys and all the accolades and whatever, the money, whatnot, there's still something missing if we haven't addressed those earlier issues, whatever they might be. And that is what I find, where the emptiness comes in. And that's often what they'll say is, I'm feeling empty, something's missing, I'm not sure what it is, I'm feeling stuck. The business is doing great, or maybe it's not even doing as great as it should be because they're stuck and feeling empty. And sometimes they're just not paying enough attention to the business because of this emptiness. So, there's a lot of ways that that's manifested, but that's kind of it in a nutshell, if that answers your two questions well enough.
Yeah, that's awesome in reference to that stuckness. Because here on the Obstacle Buster Show, we talk all about how to be able to break through obstacles. So when you're working with leaders, do you feel like they will admit that they are stuck, or is it another conversation that they explore, that they discover that they're stuck?
It's sometimes a combination of both. So they know, as I said, something's missing. Maybe they're feeling stuck or unsatisfied. A million years ago, we used to call these kinds of moments midlife crisis and those kind of things. But it really is often a developmental shift that's occurring at a very internal and often subconscious level. So maybe something has happened either in the past or even in the more recent future. My business is declining. I went through a divorce. My kids have gone off to college, whatever it might be, or even an illness, and they're feeling like something is off and they don't necessarily know how to name it. Most of the time when they come to me, they think it's A, and then as we get deeper into it, we find out, oh, it's really, B, C, D. And then we explore those avenues. And there's often hidden loyalties that are embedded in individuals, and those usually go back to family myths and traditions and things of that nature.
So what are possible hidden beliefs or patterns that might be keeping them stuck?
Well, the overachiever or the high achiever often is trying to prove him or herself. And then when we look into the family traditions, the family patterns, they're often linked to those narratives. And it can be anything from you're never going to amount to anything to oh, you need to be everything, or you are everything. And so, those narratives are embedded in us again at a subconscious level. We don't even realize it. And then as we start to explore some of these conversations, and of course, there's a variety of ways that I do that. And one of the main things that I really work with individuals to learn how to do is to self-witness. That's a very important first step, is to learn to have self-awareness in the moment, because we are who we think we are until we realize, well, there's more to me than what I ever realized before.
So that's a great skill in reference to be self-aware. So there's a specific, do you journaling, or what methods do you teach your clients to be able to increase that awareness?
Well, there's a whole process, and I won't go into the details because it takes too long, but basically journaling is a part of it. And if they can do that, because again, I'm basically holding up the mirror and I'm asking them, I develop very specific customized programs for them, asking them to look at themselves in certain situations, because we're not taught to do that. Most of us have self-awareness to a point, but it's often after the fact. So let's say I have a history of maybe overreacting in a meeting with a specific colleague, and I tell myself over and over again, I'm not going to do that anymore, but I go in there, that person pushes a button and I overreact again. Well, my awareness comes after the fact, really clouded in guilt and shame. The point is to develop awareness in the moment so I can self-regulate, self-correct in the moment. And then once that awareness becomes deeply embodied by the person, eventually they just stop doing those things altogether, because we're really putting on a new lens, a new perspective, a new way of looking at things. As one of my clients said to me years ago, he felt like I gave him a third eye. That he was literally watching himself in the moment. And that is really what witnessing is like. I like to use the analogy, Warren, of imagine that you're the director of the movie and you're looking through the camera at yourself in action, and you're telling yourself, what to do. That's often what it feels like when you learn to self-witness and have that higher level of self-awareness.
Yeah, interesting. So you mentioned that generational trauma is one of the unseen forces that really shape leadership and their success. How does it show up in leadership, and what's the first step for a leader to be able to start that healing process?
I don't know that they can really do it on their own. I mean,
Hmm.
there's therapy, of course. That's not my role. But again, I feel like we may have awareness of something that happened to us. Most of the people that I work with, if it was fairly profound level of trauma, they have awareness, obviously, of my parents were this or that. My father was an
Mm.
alcoholic, or whatever the story might be. But they don't know what to do with that information. So the work that I do, and one of the processes that we use is something called constellation work. It helps them because my work is grounded in systems and human dynamics,
Hmm.
and those systems have a life of their own and an energy of their own. So we look at what's going on in that system, past, present, or even future, and
Hmm.
we can look at it objectively in a way that allows those leaders to see things differently, to start to heal, have a different perspective. So to be more concrete about it, I might have
Hmm.
no issues with a father, let's say, who was an alcoholic. But when we do this deeper work, I now see him no longer through the eyes of a child who was wounded, but I see him as an adult, and I have empathy and compassion, and I start to understand that my father, for all that he was, did the very best that he could. And without him, I wouldn't be who I am. And so there's a variety of ways that it happens, but that's sort of the overriding outcome that I see over and over and over again. It's very rewarding work to see a grown man or a grown woman in their 50s or 60s heal
Hmm.
with a wound they've been carrying subconsciously throughout their entire life.
And then once that's healed, what's typically the impact for that leader?
That emptiness starts to resolve. Life starts
Hmm.
to be more fulfilling. They actually become better leaders. And one of the greatest compliments I got from one of my clients last year on Father's Day was he texted me and said, "I'm a better father because of your guidance." He was already a great dad as far as I was concerned, but we took
Hmm.
it to another level. And that to me is the essence of it, because I'm equally concerned with the family system. I see too much damage when we focus so much on the business at the
Hmm.
cost of the family structure, which is really tragic to me, Warren, because you think about
Hmm.
it, we're building the business for our families to provide
Hmm.
a quality of life, and then I see many families just break up because of the business. So that's sort of my underlying mission and passion for the work, is to help leaders be better leaders for themselves, for the
Hmm.
businesses, but more importantly for their families and the people they love and care about.
Yeah, interesting. So, with that being said, many leaders are underneath that pressure to produce, to perform, or to be able to provide. So, how can they begin to shift from hustle to harmony?
It's always one of the great questions I love to talk about, because I think, and I say this often, I think we have to accept the fact as leaders, as business owners, that we will never, ever, ever get it all done by the end of the day. And so we stay later and later and later, and that just doesn't work. Or we work weekends, it doesn't work. I don't believe in work life balance. I think that's a myth. I believe in work life integration. And by that I mean, we are now on call 24 hours a day with the technological resources that we have, and it's the good news and the bad news. So we have to make choices. We have to decide that it's okay to work hard, but when I shut down, I shut down. In my house, I have a thing that, I shut down my phone after a certain point in time. And I'm always checking emails and Voxer and text and all that. But there's a certain point where I just say, I'm done now. And whatever happened today, whatever didn't get done today will be readdressed tomorrow. And that's been a game changer for me. It's just to accept that it's okay to turn off the technology and to choose, I'm resting now, or I'm recreating now, or it's dinner with my husband now, or it's a party with friends, and to be present wherever I am and be okay with that.
So, that's a great habit to be able to start, but with the leaders that would be either tuned in with in reference to that the hustle environment or the grind environment, to being able to make that shift, be more intentional about rest and integrate that into their life. What's maybe one tip or strategy that you would work with a leader to help make that transition?
Well, again, it depends on the leader, but what I see a lot
Hmm.
are leaders who are not sleeping well. We hear
Hmm.
more and more about people having anxiety and all of those kind of things. So that again, to me, the first choice is looking at how am I taking care of my physical and emotional and
Hmm.
psychological well-being. It may be different for any individual, but if, for instance, you're not taking care of the physical body, you're not sleeping, you're not working out, you're not eating right, you would start there. And those are very basic things. What you would not believe how many leaders I'm literally talking about what time do you go to bed? What time do you start winding down? Because if they're working or on their phones till 10 or 11 at night, naturally they're not going to sleep well. So the questions have to be flushed out, and it's on an individual basis. Where am I feeling the most disconnectedness in my relationships, or where am I experiencing the most stress in my life? And we start there.
Interesting. So you've been known to say that sustainable leadership really requires transformation at the identity level. Can you expand upon that of how a leader can really tap into their inner playbook so they can have more fulfillment and more purpose?
Yeah, that's a really great question, because it really again goes back to knowing who I want to be as a leader, not who I am as a leader.
Hmm.
So much of who I am as a leader is about the task orientation, meeting my strategic goals, profitability, all of those things, and those are all very important things. But what is the life that I want to be living? I was just on
Hmm.
with a client yesterday who's working so many hours and he has a young child, and of course the wife is distressed because she's not seeing him enough and she needs the support, and
Hmm.
that's life. That's what every young family goes through. So knowing really how much of this pressure is mine and how much belongs to somebody else, and what is the design of the life I want to be living, because if you don't start now, you're going to, again,
Hmm.
as I said earlier, lose a lot along the way, and it's not sustainable. It's not sustainable.
Hmm.
I'm working all the time and I'm not sleeping and I'm putting on weight and my wife or my husband are unhappy and I never see my kids. None of that is sustainable, because we're
Hmm.
whole beings. We're not robots that go to work and then we come home,
Hmm.
become a human being. We're a whole being, and we carry work home and we carry home work. I never understood. Years ago, I used
Hmm.
the tagline of whole life success, because I never understood why we addressed leadership only in the context of the business. Leadership has to
Hmm.
cross all aspects of our life, is my firm belief.
Yeah, interesting in reference to being intentional of how you're leading, not only in your work or in your business, but also at home.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't be an effective leader and go home and kick the dog and beat your wife. you know.
That
So that's
right.
what I mean by identity. I mean, who am I as a human being? What are the values that I live by? And I have to live by them everywhere.
So I hear you're saying that leader first needs to spend some time thinking and processing who they really are as a leader to connect with that, which is going to help drive their actions in their leadership activities.
Yeah, and I still very strongly believe, and I have all my clients really spend the time and the reflect
Hmm.
intention on a personal mission statement. We do that for our businesses, but I believe we need that
Hmm.
for our personal life as well. And then we make decisions and choices and live by that. It's not always easy, because we may feel like we're missing opportunities, that show up on behalf of the family. If it's all about the ROI, I see that so much. But what good does it do if I'm losing all of that in the process? I mean, I had a client a couple of years ago that had a $4 million business and went through a divorce because of it. And it cost her a lot of money to go through the divorce,
Hmm.
because he got half of everything. So,
So, what's a mindset shift that a leader could consider to be able to start leading with about identity and more intention about how they're leading?
I think, it's a lot of the premises we used to talk about years ago around servant leadership.
Hmm.
Who am I in service to? The almighty dollar. I mean, yeah, we need that money. We want that money. I mean, that allows us to do a lot of wonderful things in business and in our personal life. But what is the point of it? It can't just be about the money. It has to be about the bigger components of the why. As
Mm-hmm.
Simon Sinek spoke so eloquently about years ago.
Mm-hmm.
What is the why behind the business, and what is the why behind my life and what I want for my family?
So when you're working with leaders, sometimes often leaders, they're very strong in reference to their focus, obviously in driving for business. Do you get pushback when you're starting to examine some of these ideas, like identifying the identity or their purpose? Or do you find that they're easy to be able to work with because they're at a point in their career, they're saying, something's not here, that fulfillment, so I need to discover something different?
I think most of the time, what I see, to be honest, Warren, is
Mm-hmm.
kind of surprise and then relief. Like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
somebody's actually giving me permission uh, to know what I'm already feeling, that this isn't it. Like, there's got to be something more than just this grind. And that's where we can really start doing the work, when they really take that kind of sigh and go, wow, I hadn't thought that I could do things differently. And it's
And
not
what,
giving anything up. I'm sorry. It's not
yeah.
giving anything up. It's really a mindset, a shift toward radical abundance that says, I can have it. I just don't have to be in pain in the process. I have an example I could give you, but you had a question and I interrupted you.
No, that's right. Go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking of years ago, I had a client that I worked with for many, many years. And one of the biggest problems we had, and he would not have a problem with my sharing this because we've talked about it quite openly, even on my own podcast, was he worked all the time. I mean, he has an engineering firm, and there's just, a lot of detail, and he's a great engineer, but he was working pretty much 7 days a week. And of course, his wife didn't appreciate that. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were always working to strategically design a way that he could work less. But no matter what we designed, he couldn't do it. And then one day we were in one of these deeper conversations in a session, and he said it right out loud. He goes, Sharon, I don't understand that premise of relaxation. He said, I grew up on a farm. When you grew up on a farm, we worked
Mm-hmm.
every day. I mean, that was ingrained in me. You came home from school and you worked on the farm, and on the weekends you worked on the farm. And it was amazing because he did not realize that narrative, that family
Mm-hmm.
really vision and purpose was so ingrained in him that he literally did not know what it would be like to take weekends off or to come home from the office at a regular time. So it's something he still battles with, but we did a lot of work, and every time I
Mm-hmm.
see him, he's like, I'm doing better, I'm doing better. And it's hard to break some of those narratives, but if they can do it, and even consider that it's possible, that's the first step.
So on this show, we talk a lot about breaking through obstacles, going from stuck to unstoppable. When you think of your own career and your journey, what obstacles have you had to overcome to be able to live on purpose?
Well, first, let me say, I didn't know you used that language. We're rebranding my own podcast, and that's what we're calling it, the Unstuck and Unstoppable Leader, because that's the work I do. My own
Uh-huh.
obstacle, well, it's a long story. My biggest obstacle, I think, was my son was physically disabled all of his life, and
Mm-hmm.
it was very difficult for both my husband and I to work and deal with all the challenges that our son Michael had. And then he became critically ill. He was ill for 4 years and then passed away. And that was a turning point for me, where I had I had a couple of years, to be honest, where I felt like, I don't even care. I don't even want to work. I don't even, I just didn't have the drive. I lost all my drive. I lost all my passion
Mm-hmm.
for the work. So, I had to do a lot of deeper work on myself to get past that, to regain my purpose and my passion. And actually, the work got better and deeper as a result of my own journey.
Wow, that's quite a story in reference to that difficult challenge. So sorry, but you've obviously learned from that and been able to then lead others from your experience.
Well, and what I learned from that, to kind of tie this into what we were talking about earlier, is that every every roadblock, every obstacle, to use your language, is an opportunity for developmental growth. I had the biggest growth during that time frame of grief. And I didn't mention, but there's 12 stages of human development that we know of based on the research today. The average American, as I'm often heard to say, there's about 68% of the American workforce that are at stage 5 or 6 and never get beyond that. And the goal is not to move beyond that, but to know that when I do hit a hard spot in my life, often it feels hard because I'm leaning into a later stage, meaning life's meaning and purpose is shifting for me. And it can feel like a loss of identity. It can feel like grief. It can be a lot of things, but it is definitely an opportunity for developmental growth.
Yeah, interesting. It's so true in reference to being able to use that obstacle to be able to build resilience, strengthen your resilience, to be able to grow as a leader, and not only in the business, but also, as you mentioned earlier, also so important to use those same skills in the family.
Yeah, and I think that's something I'm passionate about getting out there, because some of us just do it naturally because we're resilient naturally. But for
Mm-hmm.
many, it can take them out. A divorce can define a person. Cancer can define a person.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to get that message out there that there's something to be learned here. There's value. Nothing is wasted. Tragedy doesn't have to be the end of the road. It can be the beginning of the road for you.
Yeah, so very well said. So I know our listeners are we would like to be able to connect with you. What's the best way for them to be able to connect?
Well, I always, SharonSpano.com is my website. And then we will have a specific page on my website linked to you. And on that, it will be SharonSpanoWorkshops.com/obstacle. And I have on there something called the Leader's Edge. It's a quiz. It's free, that people see. We focused on the 6 stages of development that are most often found in the workforce. And it's an interesting report I developed to help people, because they always were asking me, well, how do I know where I land? And the assessment is costly to know that. So we developed this quiz with a worksheet that'll tell you where you are and some things you might want to do to be a more effective leader, where you might be tripped up. And it's kind of a fun, interesting, and we'll have that on that page as well.
Well, excellent. I'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for all your shares of your strategies, tips, helping our listeners to overcome their obstacles and build resilience.
Well, thank you for doing the work that you're doing, because I think we just have to be out there doing whatever we can to help leaders be more effective in these times of constant change and innovation, all very exciting times, but stressful nonetheless.
Yes. Well, thank you again for being on the show.
Appreciate it.
Well, this is your host, Warren Wadling, saying until next time, be an obstacle buster and be resilient.